Believe Nation.
Oh, Believe Nation. Okay. All right, here we go.
Need motivation?
Watch the top 10 on Believe Nation.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like 9 to 9. For my top 10, top 10, top 10, 9 to 9. This one's for my top 10.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because chances are you are the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more, and you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Kevin O'Leary, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1. Know the difference between a business and a hobby.
I have a definition of what is a hobby and what is a business by saying, if you can't make money within 36 months, which is 3 years, which is a big number for me in business, it's just a hobby and it's not a business. If you're still losing money after 3 years, you should treat it for what it is. You know, a use of your time that is not productive, but you enjoy it for other reasons. If you can't make it profitable after all that time, it is just a hobby. And if you're using all your time to spend on it, then you're not an entrepreneur. You're not creating something where you can create jobs and provide services to people. You're just wasting your time and wasting your money. Take it behind the barn and shoot it. That's my definition.
Rule number 2, work for yourself.
I was working once at an ice cream parlor when I was about 15 years old, my first real job. And on the second day, I was asked to scrape the gum off between the Mexican tiles on the floor. And I said to the woman who owned the store, it was called Magoo's Ice Cream Parlor, "You didn't hire me to scrape gum, you hired me to scoop ice cream." And this girl in the shoe store across the way that's looking at me, I don't want her to see me scraping the gum. And she said, "What are you talking about? I own this store. I'll do anything I want with you. Get down on your knees and scrape that gum." And I said, "I'm not doing it." She said, "You're fired." Last job I ever had. I owe that woman everything. I don't like to work for people. Many of you in here, I hope, inherit that. There's nothing wrong with it, but if you want to control your own destiny, you work for yourself. That's how it works.
Rule number 3, start saving.
The majority, or many, I should say, of my employees and the employees of the supply chain that supplies our companies, because we're very integrated with our supply chain, have no investment strategy at all. They don't have anything saved. They have nothing planned for their retirement. And they're in their, mid-20s to early 30s. That is insane. And, because it got exposed to me because we were talking about payroll. And the PPP loan took a snapshot of your payroll Feb 15th and where it was going to be June 30th or June 15th. And so we got into these discussions with our employees and I was shocked. Nobody has any savings or any investment strategy. And there's a difference between saving and investing anyways, because if you don't start putting aside at least $100 a week, if you've got a job, you will have nothing at the end of your career to live off. If you invest $100 a week, a minimum, you could have as much as $1.3 million, $1.4 million, $1.5 million, depending on how the markets perform over the next 40 years.
Rule number 4, pursue your passion.
You should not risk your family's well-being. What you should do is work at night and on weekends on something you're passionate about to find out whether or not it's going to work before you take the leap. If you can actually prove a product or service has demand and people start buying it from you, you can do it like everybody else does. It's a side hustle until it has enough critical mass for you to jump ship. That way you don't take a huge risk. I would not risk my family's income. But if you know something that you really like, you can pursue it at nights and on weekends. Yeah, it becomes tough to go to soccer games and picnics, but that's okay because you're pursuing that dream at 38. You're not that old. You can definitely take a risk, but you're not going to give up your primary income until you have enough proof of concept, proof of customer, proof of sales, proof of cash flow, and all those things can be done over a couple of year period of doing it as a side hustle. That's how entrepreneurs in your situation get started.
Let's talk about writing books because I'm working on my 4th now. I'm hating every minute of it, but I think it's going to be my best. But I always say that about every book. How do you do yours?
This book came when I was on tour last year, and I was hitting the city every 4 days and doing a speech in front of a group, and the questions that people asked me, I just kept like a note of what people kept asking me over and over again, and then it turned it into.
And you got, thematically, you would get some very questions over and over again that people had, right? And you say that is a kernel. That's an important question because they keep getting it all the time. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I was on tour and people kept asking me, how do I find my purpose? How do I find my purpose? How do I find my purpose? It's like the number one question in every city across America. I said, well, that's pretty easy. You don't have to sit on top of a mountain for 10 years or hire a $20,000 business coach. You know, there's a 3-step process to find your purpose. And I just guided them through it. And then everyone's, hey, pick me, do it with me. It's like, okay, well, I'll turn it into a book. And that became Built to Serve.
Sounds good. I got to read that book now. That sounds pretty good. I got to find my purpose. I've really enjoyed our time today. It's
great.
You're a good guy.
Thank you.
I'm going to endorse you. It's fantastic.
Rule number 5, face the truth.
I get a lot of flack for, telling the truth. I'm the only shark that tells the truth. Because think about your tenure as an entrepreneur. You have X number of years. It breaks my heart to see someone spend months and then years and then all of their family's money on a really stupid idea. It's better to face the truth and give up that pursuit and start another one. The great thing about entrepreneurship is if you fail, you try again. But after 3 years, if you're not making any money, it's a hobby, it's not a business.
Rule number 6, be a skeptic.
I think being a skeptic makes you test your own assumptions and those of others around you. And always ask yourself, is this person telling me the truth, and can I validate it? Is there any way I can know with certainty that this is correct? And if you remain a skeptic until you prove it out. And the other thing, Ev and I look at is, what's the reputation of somebody? I mean, over time, you build your own brand if you're an entrepreneur. You start to realize that you work in a world of many other people interacting with you, and they make assumptions about you, and they learn more and more over time about who you are. You can't shortcut a reputation. You have to build it. And it takes a long time to build it up, and it's very easy to destroy. And the way you destroy it is you start lying to people.
Rule number 7, know your potential.
The salespeople that really succeed are able to set targets on a monthly or quarterly basis and make them. Make them. In other words, don't set targets you can't achieve. If you tell me you're going to get 100,000 in sales in a week or a month or whatever it is, get 100,000 in sales. Know exactly your territory, know what your potential is, and don't overestimate. The salespeople that really advance are the most coveted, are those that have stability to their forecasts. That's what I'm talking about. I love salespeople, men and women, that know what they can achieve and consistently deliver on those numbers.
Rule number 8, hire slowly.
I've learned a different tact. What I do is I try and bring someone into a company or in my own group for 6 months on a trial basis to see if they interact with the team, and tell them honestly and transparently, look, we don't know if it's going to work. Why don't you come in as an intern? Why don't you check it out? How do you see how you feel? And then if we really gel, you stay on. There's nothing worse than bringing, a cancer into your body. That's the way I look at it. And you want somebody that's on board and can work with everybody else. And I like to hire very slowly and fire very quickly. And I tell that to all my CEOs.
And I think people gravitate of they might be too nice, and then one bad thing happens, so then they go and they say, well, now I'm going to be extra tough.
Yeah.
And then you build a different kind of culture, but that's not actually who you are. And then you try to, it's just finding that flow for who you are and the kind of business you want to build.
But you want to be with people that want to be with you, and everybody shares a common vision. And I think that's the new Entrepreneur 2.0, is making sure that A, you have a social mission that you care and you're all in sync with, and B, you have a profit motivation, because that's how you keep the business intact. And if anybody's not on board with your vision, your direction, they shouldn't be there, and they don't want to be there long term. So I look at it and say, are we all singing from the same song sheet? Let's test that every few months. Let's sit around and ask each other, is everybody happy? Who's unhappy? And just bring it out. I think listen, it sounds kumbaya, but it works.
Rule number 9, turn your weaknesses into strengths.
When I was growing up, I was born from immigrants, an Irish and Lebanese, an Irish father, Lebanese mother. And by the time I hit 7, it was clear I had some really big problems in math and reading, going back to the education, because I had a really bad case of dyslexia. And so in those days, dyslexic, outcomes were bad because you really fell behind in school. And they didn't really understand how it worked. And luckily, I was very fortunate. My mother was desperate. She was trying to find a solution for this because I was falling behind really quickly in those critical years in early school. And so she found this woman named Marjorie Golick, who had an experimental. Sam Rabinovich and Marjorie Golick were researchers. They're published all around the world now. But they basically thought they could take dyslexic children after school, maybe 12 or 18, and put them into an experimental program where they try and convince the kids that dyslexia is actually a superpower that other people don't have, so that your confidence really advances. And that's what they ended up doing with me. They said, look, do you know anybody else in your class that can read a book upside down in a mirror? No, you're the only guy that can do it. That's a power. They wish they could do it, they can't. And so that started to give me the confidence, because dyslexia doesn't really retard learning, it just makes the incumbent tools in schools useless to you. I mean, nobody gives you a book upside down in a mirror. You have to learn how to deal with what dyslexia does. And that, once I had that solved, it was a very interesting acceleration that occurred. And you find in business today all kinds of founders of companies, like the guy that founded JetBlue, a really bad case of dyslexia. I think it helps you think outside of the box. And I've always thought business is half creativity that comes from the chaos of the arts and half the discipline of science. Business is binary. You either make money or you lose it. I think great CEOs, great entrepreneurs combine the chaos of art with the discipline of science. And I believe that